Gender, understanding the spectrum. Gender is a fundamental principle noted in the organization of society and culture. Gender is generally assigned at birth based on anatomy or chromosomes. For most, the gender assigned will correlate with their innate sense of maleness or femaleness. However, for some individuals, gender identity will not correlate with their assigned gender. To start, we need to have a basic understanding of common terms used to communicate gender issues. Gender, the publicly and often legally lived role as male or female. This is a combination of factors that include biological, social, and psychological that contribute to an individual's overall gender development. Assigned gender, an individual's initial assignment at birth as male or female. This is most often based on external genitalia. Gender identity. This is a category of social identity. It refers to how an individual identifies their gender. It is a deeply held awareness of being male, female, neither, or some of both. It does not always correlate with their biological gender. Gender expression. The method an individual communicates their gender to others. This is seen in appearance, clothing, and mannerisms. Gender atypical. Physical or behavioral features that are not typical of other individuals with the same assigned gender within a given society. Gender nonconforming. Behavioral features that are not typical of other individuals with the same assigned gender within a given society. Gender fluidity. Experiencing different gender identifications at different times. Gender expansiveness. A larger, more flexible range of gender identification or expression than often noted in binary gender system. Gender dysphoria. A conflict an individual has between their physical or assigned gender and the gender they identify with. Individuals with gender dysphoria often will have significant distress due to this conflict. The distress can often cause challenges in their daily functions. It is not the same as gender nonconformity, gender expansiveness, or gender creativity. Cisgender. These are individuals whose assigned gender aligns with their gender identity and/or expression. Agendered. Without gender, those that identify as having no gender. Transgender. Individuals who identify with a gender different from the one assigned to them at birth. Note, an individual born classified as a male but identifies as a female is a transgender female. An individual born classified as a female but identifies as a male is a transgender male. Have you ever really thought about what makes up gender? There are three main components: chromosomes, anatomy, and brain structure. At conception, the establishment of chromosomal differentiation occurs. For most, they either have XY to determine male or XX to determine female. Either way, for the initial 6 weeks of human gestation, both genders will develop in an identical manner. At approximately 6 weeks of gestation, gonadal development or anatomy of ovaries or testes will occur. Following gonadal development in males, hormone secretion occurs, while the ovaries in females will remain silent. For the next approximate 6 weeks, the fetus will develop outward characteristics most commonly associated with the male or female physical attributes. For our brain structure, neuron production starts at approximately 6 weeks of gestation and is largely complete by 20 weeks of gestation. It is made up of more than 100 billion neurons. Overall, brain development will then continue throughout late adolescence and arguably through an individual's lifespan. For most, these three aspects, our chromosomes, our anatomy, and our brain structure, will line up. But what if something does not line up? Most individuals win the lottery of gender with all three aspects of chromosomes, phenotype, and brain structure lining up as either male or female. However, it is possible to be born with the genitals of one gender and the chromosomes of another. Newer research on brain structure is showing it is also possible to be born with a brain structure different than our chromosome structure or our phenotype development. A chromosome is a thread-like structure made up of protein and nucleic acids. It is found within the nucleus of most living cells and it carries genetic information. Each cell will normally have 23 pairs of chromosomes for a total of 46 chromosomes. Typical males are noted to have XY, and typical females are noted to have XX. Sex chromosome abnormalities can be caused by numeric abnormalities in the chromosomes or structural defects. Phenotype, or physical attributes, are a main classification tool used to differentiate gender. There have been a number of genes that are essential for the differentiation of both testes and ovaries. Disruption in these genes can affect the physical attributes noted in an individual. In fact, one laboratory study on mice noted early regression of gonads or the complete failure of their development with the deletion of these genes. Disorder of sexual development is a diagnostic example for some phenotype disorders. Atypical genitalia was noted to occur from endogenous internal virilization from a condition called congenital adrenal hyperplasia. This is the result of a deficiency in an enzyme that is involved in the biosynthesis of steroid hormone, aldosterone, and cortisol. Despite having no palpable gonads, these individuals are classified as men, raised as men, and diagnosed later in life. Today, this condition is often caught within the first week of life due to modern screening tools. Mixed gonadal dysgenesis is an individual with atypical genitalia. Often, an unfertile descended testes is noted on the right, and a streaked gonad with remnants of retained Mullerian or primordial enillage of the female reproductive tract is noted on the opposite side. Ovotesticular individuals have been historically referred to as true hermaphrodites. These individuals are noted to have both ovarian tissue with follicles, as well as testicular tissue with seminiferous tubules. It is noted that both environmental input and gene expression are essential for normal brain development. All of these individual steps must occur in a stringent manner for an individual to develop normally into male or female. Failure at any aspect of the sequential stage of development can have a significant effect on normal gender development. Advanced understanding of human development and gender is showing that the brain may in fact be the main source of gender identity. The brain structure of gender for an individual is not always in alignment with chromosomes or visible anatomy. Evidence has shown that external factors like endocrine disruptors or endocrine dysfunction in either the mother or fetus can disrupt neurodevelopmental response. There is suggestion of an intact body image map wired into the brain prior to birth. This body image map explains why an individual born without a limb has a vivid phantom limb sensation so intense they can move it and make complicated gestures. Just like the individual born with a sensation of a missing arm or leg, many transgender individuals have either a phantom limb sensation for anatomy of the gender they identify as, and or a reduced sensation for the anatomy of the gender their phenotype has classified them in. In other words, some transgender females will have reduced genital sensation, while transgender males may have an increased genital sensation with reduced breast sensation. This denotes brain wiring. One study performed at the Hudson Institute of Medical Research in Melbourne, Australia, has noted an overrepresentation of 4 genes in transgender women. These genes are involved in sex hormone processing. This can interrupt the processing of androgen in a male brain and result in a more feminine brain structure development. Studies using MRI imaging has revealed that the brain of a transgender female is more like a cisgender female than the cisgender male, and vice versa. One of the main regions demonstrating this structural evidence is the insula. The insula plays a vital role in self-awareness, empathy, and body image. In other words, the transgender brain is structurally more like the gender they identify with instead of the gender that was assigned to them. It is important to note that the gender spectrum has been observed for many generations. Prior to European influence, the Native American culture did not place a moral gradient to gender or sexuality. They placed value in an individual's contribution to the tribe. Gender roles were not assigned to their children, and their clothing was more gender neutral. And because their culture did not place a negative stigma on those who did not follow gender norms, retaliation and violence toward these individuals did not occur. In fact, they believed those having both male and female characteristics were highly revered and considered lucky. This blend of genders was acknowledged to be a gift of nature because they are able to relate to both genders. Native American belief is that some people are born with spirits of both genders and express them so perfectly. They associate these individuals with exceptional compassion, keen artistic skills, and possessing a high-functioning intellect. According to Indian Country Today, 5 gender roles are acknowledged by the Native American communities. These are female, male, two-spirit female, two-spirit male, and transgender. Each tribe has their own specific term. The name Two-Spirit was created as a universal term to allow the general English population to understand. In 2006, the Rabbi Elliot Kukla wrote a fact sheet entitled Terms for Gender Diversity in Classical Jewish Text. In this document, the rabbi listed 6 different genders noted in the Mishnah and Talmud that were written between the 1st and the 8th centuries, and in the classical Midrash and Jewish law codes that were written between the 2nd and 16th centuries. The phenomenon of gender variance has been observed in other species as well, including insects, crustaceans, as well as birds. In 2019, the National Geographic had an article about a couple who saw a half-male, half-female cardinal. This is called gynandromorphy. You see, in birds, gender chromosomes are Z and W. Males have 2 Zs and only produce Z-carrying sperm. Females have ZW, and females produce either Z or W-carrying eggs. With gynandromorphy, the female egg develops with 2 nuclei, one Z and one W. It is double fertilized by 2 Z-carrying sperm. Half of the body develops as male, bright red in color with 2 Z chromosomes, and the other half develops as female with a ZX chromosome. The American Psychiatric Association has a diagnostic book, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM. It has defined various psychological processes and the diagnostic criteria for each. Periodically, this manual is updated based on the most current research. Published in 1994, the DSM-IV has the diagnosis of gender identity disorder. This disorder is defined as a strong and persistent cross-gender identification, meeting a certain number of listed diagnosis criteria, but includes persistent discomfort with his or her sex or sense of inappropriateness in the gender roles of that sex. It's not concurrent with any physical intersex condition, and the disturbance causes clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. Published in 2013, the DSM-5 removed the diagnosis of gender identity disorder and replaced it with gender dysphoria. They say it's a marked incongruence between one's experienced or expressed gender and the assigned gender, meeting a certain number of listed criteria for diagnosis that includes the conditions associated with clinically significant distress or impairment in social, school, or other areas of important function. It appears to be a small change, but please note, the DSM-IV diagnosis, the alteration in gender identification, as a psychological disorder, when in fact the psychological condition is the dysphoria that arises from the incongruence. .6% of U.S. adults and 0.7% of youth ages 13 to 17 identify as transgender. Being a transgender individual can be intensely frightening and isolating. If rejected, it's possible to develop damaging views of themselves and their identity that can last a lifetime. Many of these individuals experience bullying and discrimination. This places them at higher risk for depression, substance abuse, risky sexual behaviors, and suicidal ideation, and can even affect their professional or academic success. Victims of discrimination and harassment often feel like a burden to those that matter most to them because they fear they are bringing their loved ones down from chronic negative experiences from the harassment they receive. In fact, studies have shown 3 out of 4 transgender individuals experience anxiety and/or depression, and 4 out of 5 have self-harmed. In addition, transgender youth are more likely to participate in substance use and report experiencing violence. 41%, almost half, have attempted suicide. The suicide risk was especially severe for those transgender or gender nonconforming people that had endured discrimination, hostility, or violence. When you look at the overall suicide attempts in a population, it's important to note if there's a cause chain and to identify what can be done to help. You see, the overall population suicide attempt is 4.6%. Lesbian, gay, and bisexual individuals, their suicide attempt is 10 to 20%. Yet with transgender, it is up to 41%. The influencing factors for the high transgender suicide rate include their demographics, quality of life, presenting effectively, experiencing bias, and the reception of acceptance. Demographics that can impact the percentage of suicide attempts include being younger in age, from 18 to 24 years of age, multiracial, lower education, and a low annual income. Transgender and gender nonconforming individuals who did not perceive a significant impact on their quality of life had a lower suicide attempt rate than those that did. Transgender individuals who have difficulty presenting as their identified gender have a higher suicide attempt rate than those who do not. Anti-transgender bias or stressors include rejection, discrimination, and violence, and it can come from many sources, including, but not limited to, school, work, law enforcement, housing discrimination, homelessness, denial of access to medical care, and family rejection and/or bias. For those whose family relationships remain strong after coming out as transgender or gender nonconforming, their suicide attempt rate is lower at about 33%. Some studies have shown the impact of overall acceptance in family, friends, school, and work can reduce this risk to less than 15%. And for some, it can even be brought down to a cisgender rate of less than 5%. How does acceptance help? Studies have shown acceptance will reduce depression by 71%, thoughts of suicide by 35%, and suicidal attempts by 65%. This reduction of depression and suicidal attempts to a near cisgender rate indicates the risk is not because an individual identifies as transgender, but instead reflects the impact of discrimination, harassment, and rejection. Stronger mental health is noted in the transgender community when they are acknowledged and respected for who they identify to be. StopBullying.gov has guidance to help reduce bullying. First of all, they recommend building a safe environment for all. They recommend building strong connections with all individuals through open lines of communication and demonstrating acceptance. Accept others as they are and how they choose to conceal, reveal, or identify. Protect individuals' privacy. Do not discuss gender or sexual identity to anyone without the individual's permission. The only exception to this is if there is an immediate threat to their safety or well-being. Provide interpersonal support by creating a safe place. This safe place will allow the individual to talk about their sexual identity and help them to navigate the decision to conceal or disclose to others. Establish a safe environment. Send a message that no one should be treated differently, and add gender identity and sexual orientation protection to anti-discrimination policy. Some additional ideas include conducting social emotional learning activities that help to develop empathy for others and foster peer relationships. Schools can help develop gay-straight alliances that create a safe school for all.